Welcome to Mars. And in the new film, John Carter, the red planet is thriving with intelligent, strange-looking, and even beautiful Martians. In reality, though, we know Mars looks like this. No intelligent life in sight. But in 1912, when Edgar Rice Burroughs wrote the first of 11 John Carter books, Mars was much more mysterious, and the thought of intelligent life on its surface actually had some scientific backing.
Edgar Rice Burroughs jumped on that. You know, the telescopes had advanced just enough that they could see the surface a little bit better, but not accurately enough to still have to guess. And they thought all the lines on Mars were canals, and I think that got his imagination going. And he started to think of civilizations that were connected by canals, and that's what was sort of fascinating.
Thank astronomer Percival Lowell for this. In 1895, he published a book suggesting that the lines on the Martian surface could be canals, strategically connecting what water was left on the planet. And this is what he started.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than man's.
That's Orson Welles' reading of the 1898 novel War of the Worlds, which infamously caused panic among listeners. In this book, Martians were intelligent, evil, and came to Earth in enormous tripods armed with heat rays. This was only the beginning of the Martian invasion of our media. In 1910, Thomas Edison produced A Trip to Mars, which featured the first Martian in a movie. The Russian book Elita, written in 1923, depicted a Martian revolution between the working and ruling classes of Mars. The following year, it was turned into this movie. C.S. Lewis, Ray Bradbury, and Robert Heinlein all had stories about Martians in the 40s. In these cases, the humans were invading Mars. And who could forget Little Marvin? First introduced in a 1948 Looney Tunes cartoon, this Martian lands on our moon and tries to blow up the Earth.
What are you, some kind of magician? Who, me? Oh, hardly.
Now, in the Twilight Zone, Martians look maybe too much like us. And in the TV show My Favorite Martian, they're even our friends. But in 1964, Mariner 4 flies by Mars, taking the first close-up photos of another planet. This event crushes theories and our imaginations for intelligent Martians. From here on out, stories about civilized Martians are usually deliberate attempts at nostalgia, as is the case with this adaptation of John Carter.
That was my desire, was to keep the movie in that time period, in that sort of airspace of when people thought of things in the turn of the century 100 years ago. I had no interest and nothing seemed interesting to me about bringing it to anything modern.
Now, what about the Martians? I mean, you're an animator. How do you go about designing aliens?
Well, again, when I read it as a kid, I wanted to believe this could really happen. So down to the physiology of the tharks, of the calots, these dogs, these thoats, we looked at real nature all over our planet, and we tried to say, what's the kind of physiology we could steal from desert-dwelling creatures and apply it to these, so that when you look at it, it doesn't look like some fantasy, fanboy kind of artwork or mutant. It looks like something that nature just evolved naturally to because it had to survive in the desert. And I think that really helped ground it in making it feel like a sort of a believable world.
Believable and relatable, as evidenced by the loyal Woola. Did you enjoy having your own Martian dog?
I loved it. I loved it, man. I think Woola steals a movie, more or less. Yeah, it was fun, and I think everyone can relate to that, you know, just because it's Woola with 10 legs. You know, he does represent what an Earth dog.
Quit it!
In 2012, our fears of Martian invasions are no more. But it appears that with a bit of nostalgia and imagination, Mars and its inhabitants are more Earth-like than ever. For Discovery News, I'm Martin Berman.